we'll start with what has things been like for the Chiefs, and they're not even down here in Tampa yet because COVID and it's weird times. So just what has these last couple of weeks of prep been for them, and when are they going to get down here to Tampa?
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, obviously, there's so many things different with everything in our lives because of COVID. It certainly has impacted the Super Bowl in many ways, and it seems kind of superficial, but typically for a Super Bowl, the teams come to the host city on the Sunday before. They spend the entire week here. Now, obviously, further making this different, the Bucs being the host team never happened before, wouldn't have had to travel, but the Chiefs would have been here on Sunday. They would have done all their practices here, probably at USF is usually the other facility in addition to the Bucs. The Bucs were the home team just by luck of the draw, so the Chiefs would have been the visitors. It really would have been funny if it was the other way around and the Chiefs had come in and got to use one Buc and the Bucs had to relocate to USF. That would have been something different. But so they've gotten, I mean, in a way, it's an advantage for the Chiefs if you think about it that way. Is sure they're missing out on, whatever events there would have been here, although with COVID they would have been limited, obviously. They probably would have spent a lot more time in their hotel. They wouldn't have probably got to be in your videos, which you make all these cool videos of, Rachel. But they're getting to practice at home. They're getting to sleep in their own beds. They're getting to stay in their bubble. I mean, that was kind of the essence of this decision by the NFL, was to try to keep the team safer. Again, had it been any other team but the Bucs, Green Bay, for example, they would have stayed at home too, and both teams would have come in here. The Chiefs are pushing it a little bit. They're not actually going to get here until 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Kickoff is a little after 6 on Sunday. So, I've talked to a couple of their players today in a story for tomorrow's Tampa Bay Times. And, they're basically saying they're treating it like a business trip, kind of like a regular season game. There's some merits to that. Football is like that. Certainly Andy Reid, an old school coach, I could see where they're going to kind of milk that and use it as much to their advantage as they can. But they were in the Super Bowl last year in Miami. They got to participate in all the things that come with it. You do kind of think, couldn't they have come in Friday and at least had Saturday here, or come in Saturday morning and put the players in a bus and driven them around just to see, the city and, the banners and everything, just so they kind of felt like it was part of the Super Bowl experience. But I think this allows them to kind of cocoon it up and to be like, it's us, them against the world. They're coming here for a business trip. They're going to win the game.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely weird times, and I'm sure they were in the Super Bowl last year, so they know what the whole deal's like, and this just obviously is just a completely different experience for them. But now, so you wrote a story a little earlier in the week about 55 things that we all should know about the Chiefs. Now, I don't think we have time for you to necessarily dive into all 55, but what are some of the highlights there that you think people should know about this team that the Bucs are going to be taking on here in a couple of days?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a team built around some pretty big personalities, and Patrick Mahomes, their quarterback, is certainly the biggest one. He does a couple commercials. You may have seen it, something about State Farm and a discount rate or something. You may have seen that one or two or 10,000 times maybe, but I think it was fitting that I'm covering the Chiefs. I don't know if we should give Tracy Johnson all the credit for this, but, Patrick Mahomes, son of Pat Mahomes, former Major League Baseball pitcher, spent 11 years in the big league. So there was kind of this little connection there for me. It all kind of worked together, and actually asked Patrick the other day on one of the Zoom calls about his own baseball career. And he said he thinks he probably topped out in baseball as a high school senior. He was drafted by the Tigers, actually, a low-round pick. But he played at Texas Tech a little bit, but clearly football was his forte. So that's one of the things. Here's another one for you that you probably didn't know. Andy Reid is as curmudgeonly and as straight out of Central Casting as he seems as a football coach. When he was at Brigham Young, he was actually also a newspaper columnist. And he was thinking of going into journalism. So it would have really been interesting to see Andy Reid, the journalist, write about Andy Reid, the football coach. That would have been kind of cool. Another one for you, the Kansas City Chiefs actually used to be the Dallas Texans. They were one of the American Football League, the AFL. I know that's way before your time, but they used to be the AFL and the NFL. And they were from the AFL. They were known as the Dallas Texans, and the mayor of Kansas City, whose nickname was Chief, wanted to get a football team there. So he made a deal with them. There were 2 teams in Dallas. It wasn't really working out too well. He got them to move to Kansas City. They had a contest. I think it was probably rigged. They named them the Chiefs after him. They've obviously since taken on a lot of the Native American, kind of traditions and even, in some of the names and logos, and that's a different subject, which some don't always agree with, but that was their origin. They came as the Dallas Texans from the AFL. Obviously had some super big names that have played for them. You go back and look at some of the quarterbacks, Len Dawson in the Hall of Fame. Joe Montana played there. A lot of people don't know. Steve DeBerg, who was a Buck for a long time, he went back and forth between the Bucs and the Chiefs. So a lot of interesting history there. And there were 55 things about him, and there probably could have been 55 more, but thankfully filling up 2 pages was enough on that. That's in today's special section in the Tampa Bay Times. We printed a 48-page special section about the Super Bowl that has quite a bit of information there. If anybody's interested, you can still get that, I think, for the next couple of days at your stores and stuff. And there's everything in there from like what the best ribs are in Kansas City to have if you're going to have a cookout at your house, which I understand you're having for a couple people. And also, all about the teams. Rick Stroud wrote a great story about Mahomes and Brady. John Romano's got a couple columns in there, lots of good stuff.
Yeah, definitely everyone be sure you're picking up your copy of that. It's all the Bucs content and Chiefs content you can need and more, honestly. So now with the Chiefs, they recently here have had a little bit of a COVID scare, and it's kind of a funny story with what happened and the whole barber situation. Can you let people know kind of what happened there and how one of the players ended up with not quite the haircut that he was expecting at the end?
Yeah, exactly. It's probably not as funny to them as it is to you. So all these COVID protocols, obviously teams are, bubbled, trying to do lockdowns, everything they can. So this was courtesy of NFL.com, the specifics on this, but the Chiefs have a barber who, some of the players like. That's common on sports teams. The Rays have a guy who's been doing it forever named Wilmer. So they had a barber that they used. They tested him. They said he passed 5 days in a row. He tested negative. So they had it set up for him to come into the facility on Sunday, kind of give, the guys that needed to get freshened up. I think that's the way cool kids say it, right? Freshened up. So they had him do one more rapid test as he was coming into the facility Sunday. And again, as the story goes, according to NFL.com, the Chiefs had a bunch of family, players, staff, all there being tested too. So it took a while to get the test results back. This barber's test result came back positive right as he was in the middle of cutting one of the guy's hair. So security came, told him he had to leave. Then that player got kind of designated as a close contact. And they talked to the barber, found out he cut another player's hair the day before off-site, DeMarcus Robinson. So both those players got put on the 5-day list. Now, the good thing for the Chiefs is that by finding this out on Sunday, the NFL protocol is that you have to spend 5 days in a quarantine, and then if you test negative that whole time, you can be activated. So those guys should both be able to play on Sunday, assuming they continue to test negative. As with many other sports, the Chiefs have been keeping this quiet. They're not really providing any updates. It may be, the Bucs, I'm sure, are trying to do their own reconnaissance to know, especially DeMarcus Robinson, the receiver, because he'd be a guy they need to know if they're recovering or not. But it may be a couple days or even Saturday or maybe even Sunday till we know exactly what their status is. But, yeah, there was kind of a close shave, you might say, that they didn't have more players that were exposed to them.
That's why you get paid the big bucks to come up with lines like that, right? Yeah, so that certainly, I don't know, you're probably right that I find that a lot funnier than they do. But to me, good story nonetheless. So switching gears, there also is the Chiefs Bucs are opponents, but there's definitely some connections between the two teams. One of those being their QB coach has some former ties with the Bucs, right?
Yeah, Mike Kafka, who is the QB coach for the Chiefs, and actually has already been mentioned as a kind of in this next wave of young offensive minds who's probably going to get some head coaching interviews. He had a little interest in an interview, but from the Eagles, in fact, just a few weeks ago. He spent 2014 on the Bucs practice squad, and he's one of those guys. He was in the NFL for 6 or 7 or 8 years, but he only played in one season in 2011. I think that was actually with the Eagles. So he's on the Bucs practice squad in 2014. Josh McCown, who was the starter, he gets hurt. So they actually tell Kafka he's going to get put on the active roster. So he's on the active roster for a couple weeks. Mike Glennon's playing. Kafka's not playing. It's a great gig, right? You're on the roster. You don't have to play. I mean, you can't do anything wrong. So the way Mike told the story was McCown comes back and they have the quarterback meeting room, kind of like we have the video producer meeting room at the Times. And he comes in and says, "Hey, I think I'm ready to go this week." And Kafka's like, "Great, that's so wonderful." And I got to be honest with you guys. If I get one more week on the active roster, I qualify for the benefits program, the NFL, which, financially, insurance, pension, all those good things that would really matter. So Kafka's like, "So I'm really glad you're back, but I really need one more week." So he said, Josh McCown went, this was when Lovie Smith was the coach. Josh McCown went up to Lovie Smith's office and said, "We got to do right by this guy. He's done right for us." So they kept him on the active roster as the third quarterback, basically, for that one extra week. So he got vested in the program because of that. He never played again in the NFL. So that was the last time I think he was on an active roster. So it worked out good for him, and now here he is coaching against the Bucs. There's some other connections, too. Brendan Daly, one of the Chiefs' assistant coaches, he actually got his start in coaching. He came, first of all, from my alma mater, Drake University, which is rare that Drake had a football player do very good to get anywhere. And he started his coaching right here at Ridgewood High. He spent 1 year there. He told a funny story about that. Matt Baker's going to write about that later this week, or he can tell you about it. And then we're going to tag team on this Instagram. But he started his coaching career. Just, you think about that. You could have been going to Ridgewood High that year, and you're like, "Oh, that guy's the assistant football coach." And now here he is in the Super Bowl with his team as one of the top assistants for the Chiefs.
Yeah, they ended up in a good place. I mean, he's definitely not the most famous Drake alum, in my mind, at least. I think
I'm not? Who is?
He's not.
Oh, okay.
You
okay.
Are.
Okay.
Don't worry.
I want to see who else you knew who went to Drake. I mean, they are 16-0, by the way, and ranked in the men's poll.
There you go. Wow. Impressive. Awesome. Well, thank you for that wealth of knowledge, Marc. We're going to be, like you said, bringing Matt in here, hopefully, in a minute to get his take on all things Chiefs as well, and all the knowledge he's accumulated over the last week or two. So you're putting out some great content. Keep it up.
All right, Rachel. Well, thanks for all your help, and I look forward to those ribs you're making.
You got it. They're gonna be like better than Kansas City. I promise.
Right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks.
Hey, all right.
Hey, Matt. How's it going?
Hanging in there. Had a little technical difficulties, but it's all good. What's going on? Let's talk.
That's all good too. We had some trouble with Marc. He ended up just using his personal account, so it's all good. We're working out the kinks here. But awesome. So we just talked a little bit with him about Chiefs and talked about his 55 things to know about the Chiefs story. So he gave us some general background on the team and some of that knowledge. So just kind of interested in your take on the team and what you've noticed from covering them these last couple of weeks, and what their preparation's been like leading up to the big game on Sunday.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is how, this is a team that's obviously been here before. The Bucs, we all know the story. They haven't been to the playoffs in 1,000 billion years. I mean, I've been here since 2011. This is the first time the Bucs have really been nationally relevant, and here they are in the Super Bowl in Tampa. But the Chiefs have been here before. Their whole thing this season is run it back, trying to get to another Super Bowl, and here they are. And I think they're handling all that well. They know what the stage is like. They know. Obviously, everything's different with COVID. Normally, we would probably be like in person talking together rather than doing this in my office after my kid goes to bed. So it's different preparations for them as well. But at the same time, they know just how the structure of the week goes and getting everything done last week in terms of installation, because this week's going to be a lot crazier with the media and everything else. So that's kind of my overall thoughts on the Chiefs, is the fact that they've been here before, and of course that the Bucs haven't in a long time, other than the Brady and Gronks.
Exactly. Yeah, which is a key part of why they're here. And the whole Brady-Mahomes matchup has been much talked about. But I wanted to talk to you about, since you're our resident college football guy here, today especially, and over the last week or so, you've written a lot of stories about the connections to the college game. So I just want to talk a little bit about that, and I know you had a couple stories on that today, and one of them being the 3 former Gators who are going to be in the game.
Yeah, so Dan Mullen's coached 4 different guys who are on the Chiefs. One of them, Willie Gay, isn't going to be playing. He's out with a knee injury. But Chris Jones, Pro Bowl defensive tackle for the Chiefs, Martinez Rankin, an offensive lineman who might end up starting or at least seeing significant action given the injury issues on the Chiefs O-line, and Tommy Townsend, the punter from the Gators as well. Mullen coached all those guys, and I wrote something on TampaBay.com about that. I think each one tells us a little bit about Dan Mullen as a coach and as a recruiter. Very few coaches are as invested in special teams as Dan Mullen is, and it shows up in a lot of different ways. They were one of the best punt teams in the country last year, and he's got 2 NFL punters. One of them, Tommy Townsend's in the Super Bowl. Martinez Rankin, offensive lineman, was a JUCO recruit. Had no offers in high school, goes to the junior college route. Mullen gets him, and he ends up developing into one of the better offensive linemen in the SEC. Some coaches are kind of turned off by the JUCO guys just because they're not going to be around for as long. And if you go to junior colleges, there's a reason why. Mullen has not typically been scared by that. He's signed some for the Gators in the past and has one in DeJuan Black, a 4-star linebacker who I think the Gators are going to be counting on a lot this coming season. And again, the Rankin shows that it can be done. And then Chris Jones is the biggest one. I think if you're looking at a guy that kind of the biggest success story aside from like a Dak Prescott that Dan Mullen's had in his career is Chris Jones. He was a no-star, unheard of recruit when Mullen and his staff found him in a small school in Mississippi. Then they offer him, he commits, becomes a 3-star recruit, blows up into a 5-star recruit, and then all the other schools, the Floridas, the LSUs, they come after him. Mullen's able to land him and then take him from a raw, really talented prospect into one of the better linemen in the SEC, and now a 2-time Pro Bowler who's got a chance at a second ring. So I think Chris Jones, if you're looking for signs of optimism on the Gators long term, Chris Jones on Sunday, you can look at that and say, okay, that's what Dan Mullen can do. Now let's see what he can do with the Gators going forward.
Well, as a former Gator myself, that's music to my ears. I love to hear that.
Sure.
But yeah, no, that's wild, honestly, that there's so many former Gators just on the Chiefs alone, let alone in the NFL. And then also you had a story with, there's some Tyrann Mathieu, Leonard Fournette connection with FSU.
Yeah, absolutely. So Florida State's running backs coach is a guy named David Johnson. He was a coach at St. Augustine High School in New Orleans for a few years. It's one of the better schools in the state of Louisiana. Its alumni include the Honey Badger Tyrann Mathieu and Leonard Fournette, one of the top recruits probably ever. So the story goes that Mike Norvell was his first time as a full-time assistant coach. He was at Tulsa, stopped by practice at St. Augustine one day to check out all these loaded players that they had, hit it off with the coach David Johnson. It's been around several years later. Norvell's building staff at Florida State, hires him away, and sure enough, David Johnson comes through today, in fact, to land a 4-star recruit out of Louisiana, a receiver who's the top, or probably the second or one of the top couple recruits of the Mike Norvell era. So those connections kind of already paying off for FSU and the Noles.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Now we'll give you a break on some college stuff here. Switch gears a little bit to a different story you had written earlier about the whole back and forth between Scotty Miller, Tyreek Hill, who's faster, who wins in a race. What has that dynamic been like between both of them? Because, I mean, everybody's commenting on it, and it's kind of one of the topics that are blowing up nationally. So what have they been like going back and forth at each other? So yeah.
It's weird during Super Bowl week how some things just kind of take off. And Scotty Miller was a week ago on the Dan Patrick show saying, I think I'm the fastest guy in the NFL. I can beat Tyreek Hill. And Tyreek kind of comes on and says, all right, let's race sometime, maybe halftime. And Scotty Miller, to his credit, didn't really back down from that today. He said, he made it clear that, look, he has a lot of respect for Tyreek Hill. Their games are kind of sort of similar, I guess, in the fact that neither one's the biggest guy, but they're both very quick. Scotty Miller, obviously we know what he did against the Packers and some of the big plays he's had this year for the Bucs, but he's not on the Tyreek Hill level yet. He's just not. But he aspires to get up to that point at some time in his career. And Scotty said today that, I'm always going to be confident in myself. That's gotten me this far, and I respect the heck out of Tyreek Hill, but I'm confident in myself, and yeah, let's race, bring it. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's just one of the fun little things going on in Super Bowl week.
Yeah, I don't know if Bucs fans necessarily want to see that race happen, but I think it'd definitely be intriguing.
I don't think that would end well for Scotty. Tyreek Hill at Oklahoma State was one of the fastest players in the country, one of the fastest in a long, long time. Yeah, I don't think that was going to end well for Scotty.
Yeah, I agree. Don't think so either. But hey, you got to have confidence in yourself to get to the point that you're at. So, I mean, that's the reason why.
Sure.
Okay, so now looking forward to the next couple of days leading up to the game. I talked to Marc a little bit about like what Kansas City's preparation has been like so far, and that they're not getting here until Saturday. But from you, what are the next couple of days leading up to Sunday going to be looking like for the Chiefs?
Yeah, they're just kind of refining stuff at this point, because the game plan, they started getting all that stuff in last week. It's just this point, they're refining it, trying to get all the details right, and making sure everybody knows exactly what to do, planning on this third and medium situation. What do we like in this? All that type of fine tuning. I think there are a couple things that just to kind of watch. I'm really curious to see what happens on the offensive line heading into game day. Who's healthy? Who ends up playing where? Just because they have had, Fisher and Schwartz, their top offensive tackles, are both injured. I'm curious to see what happens with the COVID-19 reserve guys. One of them, Demarcus Robinson, one of the former Gators on here. He's not the biggest name on that Chiefs offense, but I think the Chiefs offense works the way it does because of how many good players they have. They got Clyde Edwards-Helaire at running back, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins. Demarcus Robinson is part of that group. So, we'll see whether they're able to test out of this and fly down and participate in the game on Sunday. Those are kind of a couple of things that I'm keeping an eye on.
Awesome. Well, that sounds good. And everyone, make sure you're keeping up with Matt as well as Marc throughout the week on their socials on tampabay.com. And of course, we mentioned it before, special section came out today, so make sure you pick up a copy of that, as well as Sunday's paper. There'll be already lots of content and lots more to come from all of these guys leading up to Sunday. So
yeah, we're drinking from a fire hose right now. Can't put enough stuff. Can't keep up with it all.
Try to get a few hours sleep here and there, though. Okay.
Well, thanks, Brad.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. And like I said, make sure you're checking out tampabay.com for all of your Super Bowl coverage, Bucs coverage, Chiefs coverage, all that good stuff. And also let's keep up with our social medias, Sports by Tampa Bay Times on Twitter and Facebook, as well as our Bucs Instagram account, Tampa Bay Times Bucs. So once again, thanks for joining. We'll be doing one of these a little bit later in the week too, delving into all things Bucs. So make sure you join in with us then as well. We will see you later.